Welcome back to the Crypto Trends Podcast. My name is Robert Croke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Armando Pantoja. Both of us and our amazing team are excited to bring you the best information, guidance, and strategies each and every Wednesday. So follow along and always remember to take notes and take action. We apologize for last week's missing episode, but as you all know, in South Florida, we had a hurricane to deal with, and unfortunately, we did not have access to our office or our studio, and Armando and I and Elizabeth and the entire team were dealing with the evacuation and securing our properties and our things to make sure we were okay, but we are back now and ready to knock it out of the park for all of you. Let's get into talking point number one, Bitcoin's current state and the future prospects, because we have to look right now that Bitcoin's market position is very strong since early September, and Bitcoin's price has surged over 25% with open interest across all exchanges, hitting a record high of nearly $20 billion. That's billion with a B, signaling increased institutional investment. Also, we've seen reduced sell pressure. Bitcoin supply on centralized exchanges is at a 5-year low, indicating that traders are holding on to their assets, reducing the sell pressure, which would potentially lead to continued price increases like we've seen of late. So Armando, let's start with Bitcoin. We've seen a lot of good movement recently with open interest hitting all-time highs and new metrics suggesting we might see the rally we've been waiting for. Walk our listeners through what is going on.
Bitcoin is definitely in a strong position. It just hit 68,000. It's retracted a little bit, but that's still a lot of movement over the last month. Bitcoin has went up 25% since the lows in September, which is a positive sign going forward. Now, we talked about October being Uptober and that there was going to be a big movement in Bitcoin this month, and we're starting to see that now. Right? Open interest across all exchanges right now is at 20 billion. There's a lot of interest of institutions. There's a lot of interest from banks, organizations that are buying it up. Now, the thing that kind of concerns me is that we're really not seeing a lot of retail interest, right? And that's normally what happens in accumulation phase going into markup, right? So to the people who are listening to this podcast right now, you're at a great position. You're ahead of the masses. And I encourage you to start paying attention, start looking into your investments, and start executing on a lot of the ideas that me and Robert have talked about over the last almost a year now. Yeah, so it's a great time. Bitcoin is on the way to hit all-time highs in 2025.
Yeah, and it's just huge news. And there's also been a big reduction in Bitcoin supply on exchanges. And so this is important for everyone to understand because we see it all. Armando, I think you explain it best, where you say big banks, institutions, and the mega rich are the ones taking advantage of everything right now in the crypto markets, while I feel like retail investors are sitting on the sidelines still because they always expect this huge bump up. Everyone saw the halving happened and they expected the prices to accelerate right away, and they just didn't do that. Yet if you go back and watch the old episodes, we said that we believe the bull run would begin 6 months after the halving, and right now we are at about 6 months in the next week or so. And that's just really important to understand the timing of this and how right we were relative to when we believe this bull run starts. And right now, the price action in crypto, you can see that there are a lot of elements showing that we could be going into this bull market that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's almost like during this hurricane, right? There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of people that didn't know what to do. And 2 days before the hurricane hit, I filled up my gas tank and I went and filled up 3 separate 10-gallon gas tanks, right? So during this whole time, I've had gas.
Right.
And now people are panicking. People don't have gas. People are fighting, I've heard, at the pumps. And that's because people aren't proactive, right? Is that they sit back and they wait for an authority to tell them what to do. And it's the same thing in Bitcoin, is that the price is going up. People still say it's a scam and, that fail. And the price is up 40-something% this year.
Right.
It's almost one of the best performing assets of this year, even so far.
Yep.
And people still see it as a scam or not performing. It's because they're waiting for some authority to tell them, now it's time to buy. But when that happens, it's normally too late. And this is what causes a lot of people to fail at investing because they're not proactive, they're not ahead of the masses, and they're not thinking independently.
We've been talking about this for so long that you don't have to be first to an asset class or an investment. You just have to be ahead of the masses. And I like what you said about an authority telling them it's time to buy. I almost feel like we've been in the weeds now with crypto, let's call it for the past 8-10 months, and we're here printing money. I did a post on Instagram last week of 3 of my call outs that are up like 60, 80, 100% year to date, yet people are saying that crypto's dead.
It's crazy,
and it's just because they're not following where the money is going. They're not following what we say. They're reacting to the big news channels or the clickbait or whatever is out there. And that's really sad because it's so important that if you stay ahead of the curve, like we talked about, that's where all the money is being made. And you're right. A lot of the same people in the last 2 bull runs in crypto, or they're new to crypto, are going to wait till some authority says it's time to buy, and by then most of the big run-ups will have already happened. So let's talk about the spot Bitcoin ETFs driving more demand, and we're seeing more institutional interest that seems to be growing daily. So where do you see Bit going in the next year? I know we've talked about it in the past, especially given with the presidential election coming up in just a couple short weeks, and all the talk and rhetoric around that from each candidate. So let's talk and reinvigorate our conversation of where we see Bitcoin's price going for, let's say, the end of 2025.
It's so funny because last November, me and you were on the stock market trading for the New York Stock Exchange, and they were asking us questions about where we think Bitcoin's going. And if people could go back and look at that episode, we said that AI would be a narrative driver. It is. We said that you predicted Bitcoin would be at, what was the number you had? 70? It would pass 65?
No, I think I said 75.
75,
like
and we hit 75.
Yeah.
Right under it. So he was correct about that. And now, in the last 3 or 4 months, a lot of analysts said Bitcoin's not going to 250. I said it would go to 250 in 2025. Now, a lot of analysts are now agreeing with that. But you see how they came late? It was almost a year ago. So I take pride, and I know you do too, as being ahead of the trends because that's where the money is. Like I said, there's a lot of analysts are now predicting Bitcoin to be at that 250 mark by 2025 based on RSI and also based on historical patterns, right? The stars are aligning right now for what we talked about back in November.
I agree, and I think it all just comes down to, and for many of you that follow along in the Crypto Trends podcast every week, congrats. I think you've probably printed a lot of money in the last couple of years by following Armando and myself. And I just think it's very important to understand none of this happens overnight. The key to being a really good investor is to be looking in 2 to 3 year terms, not in 2 to 3 month terms. I think that's one of the key elements is the people that are patient and the people that dollar cost average and automate their investing as much as possible are the ones that generally win the most. People ask me on our lives all the time, how often are you trading in and out and selling and buying? And it's so rare. All I do is dollar cost average every single week or every couple weeks into the projects that I love, and that's it. I rarely sell anything because I'm only in projects that I believe in long term. And I think that's just very important for everyone following along to understand is that this isn't a game of days and weeks. This is a game of years. And if you're willing to dollar cost average and follow along and understand what's happening in the markets, understand the development and the disruption, then you're going to make a ton of money from it. So let's go into talking point number 2, and that is AI token surge. And really the hot streak continues. AI tokens have significantly outperforming other sectors like meme coins. And one of the projects that's been a big standout, which was one of my call outs, I think in early 23 or late 2022, is BitTensor Tau, which has seen gains over 120% recently. So I think with the convergence of AI and crypto, the growth is really driven by the intersection of AI and blockchain technology. And with projects like BitTensor focusing on decentralized AI networks, this really fuels the excitement about the disruption potential in traditional AI industries. So Armando, we've seen AI tokens outpacing the rest of the crypto market by quite a margin. What's driving the surge? What do you like about it? And what's next?
One of the biggest things is name recognition, right? Is that everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's talking, everywhere you go, AI this, AI that. So it's top of mind for a lot of people in crypto. So it's bringing a lot of attention to these crypto projects, right? AI sector has seen a 38% increase over the last year, right? Outperforming almost all meme tokens, outperforming the market almost completely. So some of the bigger projects, like the one you called out, BitTensor, is up 120%. So it's doing extraordinarily well.
I love being right.
It's a massive surge when you're looking at the average meme coin being up 20% this year. But I think, like I said, is that it's going to be a major narrative driver because AI and crypto are just natural partners. They actually need to be together. AI needs access to resources, financial and capital, and blockchain needs access to intelligence. So eventually, my prediction over the next 10 years, they're going to merge into one anyway. So BitTensor and a lot of these projects are very early to the party, and they're going to benefit greatly.
So we've been talking about AI tokens for a couple years now, and it's great to see callouts like Tau, Near Protocol, ICP, and Render crushing it. Where do you believe, what's fueling this continued growth? And like you said, with the convergence, where are we going next for AI? Do you see continued growth for years to come, both in AI cryptos and in stocks?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of capital is flowing into AI, and there's a lot of talk about AI being in a bubble. And a bubble is not bad. It just means that so much hype comes into an asset, it pushes it past what its intrinsic value really is, and it comes back down to its intrinsic value. So it's not bad. But a lot of people, and I was at a conference this weekend, is they associate AI with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And they're like, ChatGPT is generative text, right? So it just generates text, almost like it almost tries to predict what you want it to say, and it would just give you the text back. That's a form of AI. That's not AI. AI is a lot bigger than just that, right? AI is they have machine learning, you have visual, you have big data. It's a lot of things that AI can do, and ChatGPT is just one small thing. So over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot of investment in artificial intelligence, right? Because as quantum computing starts to become more real, as blockchain starts to merge with AI, that's going to be a lot of potential and a lot of benefit for people who invest in AI going forward. So like I said, I don't think it's over. I think it may be the bubble may burst. It happens all the time. It happened in .com boom. Is that in the late 90s, the bubble burst, but we're right now doing a podcast online. And the internet generates billions and billions of dollars per year. So just because the financial bubble burst around something does not mean that the potential or the profit-making potential is gone. It will eventually grow, and there's going to be a lot of potential to invest in AI, and I think specifically in AI tokens, because this is almost like people don't even talk about it yet. And I think that it's almost like a hidden gem.
Yeah. It's crazy to think, too, because I always think of early on like Ocean Protocol and some of these other tokens we were talking about. I know now for 6-8 months, people have been telling me NVIDIA is going to tank and that it's in a bubble, and yet it prints money pretty much almost every single day for me and anyone else that holds it. So for me, I look at it that, are we in a bubble? Could we see some retraction and volatility? Absolutely, we should, because all of these are at all-time highs. But at the end of the day, AI is so early on, and we are in the embryonic stages of its use case and development, and it's just going to keep growing and growing. We saw the Tesla release this week with the humanoid robotics and the autonomous taxis. All of that plays into the growth of AI in the coming months, and that is why I love that sector, and I'm so glad we get to talk about it and do the research every single week to provide our followers and listeners with the best information.
Got a question for you. When the robots come out, I don't know what the model name is. Elon Musk robot. Are you going to get one?
Absolutely.
I am too, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing people have to understand. The question came up about a year ago, is AI going to take your job? No, AI is not going to take your job. The person that knows AI better than you is going to take your job. And AI is going to change the world. Like, you think about 10 years ago, every parent was telling their kids, learn programming. It's going to be the biggest thing in the future. And unfortunately, I think they're wrong. I think AI is going to replace programming. And you even heard Jensen talk about it from NVIDIA the other day in an interview, where it's going to replace programming because their job is to make it so it can do all the work for you and continue to create these products that make our lives easier. And then it's going to be up to the people to figure out how do they adapt AI into their everyday lives and into their everyday work and businesses. And you talk about having a humanoid robotic. We're all going to be able to have these humanoid robotics. Think about it for me, for our warehouse. At some point, I will be able to lease 10 humanoid robotics to do all the packing, all the box building, all of that. And then you don't have sick days, you don't have medical, dental, and all these other things.
You have 24 hours.
That's right. And these are going to all be able to be, there are going to be companies out there, maybe we'll own one, that leases and services these humanoid robotics. And then we'll be able to have them as employees. You have kids, you can have them around your house to do the dishes, take the kids, the dog for a walk, whatever you need. All of that is real, and it is much closer to reality than we think. So let's go into an interesting talking point, and that is talking point number 4, and that is Vice President Kamala Harris backing crypto regulation. Now, I don't know if it's pandering, because we're hearing now in the predictive markets like Polymarket that former President Trump is now leading the race. So now we have to assume that the Kamala Harris camp is going to be throwing everything, the kitchen sink out there to try and get voters back. So there's a lot of crazy announcements she's made. And let's touch on this one first, because I want to see if you think this regulatory framework is real or is it pandering? And then I can't wait to touch base with you on her new loan program, because I know you've got some things to say there.
Yeah, so this is regardless, and I always tell people this, regardless if she's pandering or she's serious, short term it would be important, because that means that she's actually going to enact these laws and regulations.
Yep.
Long term it doesn't matter, because we're seeing game theory happen. But just the fact that she has to start mentioning crypto just to try to win some voters over shows how big of an impact crypto is making in the world and in the United States specifically. So just the fact that she would have to talk about that, she's not talking about like video games. She's not talking about other stuff that may not matter. She's talking about crypto because it's starting to matter to people, especially men. So she's trying to come up with some new ways to target. She's losing men, supposedly. Started as she's dropping in likability and in potential voters in the men's sector, right? So she's trying to shore up the male vote. And one way she's trying to do that is that she wants to create more of a better regulatory framework around cryptocurrency. And also, she's also talked about 20% of black men having cryptocurrency. That she's aiming this structure to try to protect and ensure that they are protected, right? And this could bring a lot more legitimacy and stability to crypto, and it could attract a lot more investors both in and outside the United States.
Yeah, I think my biggest fear is I don't want to see the U.S. government chase all of this technology out of the United States. And for the past 2 years, they've been doing that on a grand scale. I think a lot of it revolves around Gary Gensler.
One man.
That's right. One man and his witch hunt against cryptocurrency. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that there could have been a better way to handle it. For years, the Ripples of the world and the other crypto companies have been asking for regulatory framework. What is the guidelines we need to follow? And we'll follow them. And they've never received that. So I think it's a retractive mechanism for her, because if you remember, I think it was a month ago or 5 weeks ago, she said she was going to promote Gary Gensler. And I know from me and many other people, that's a scary proposition, because if she gives him more power, what's that going to do to the crypto markets in the United States and the future development of crypto in the United States? So it's definitely scary, but let's hope that it's a positive development. But we don't know until the election is over and we see who wins. And as always, I don't care who wins the presidential election, because I can't control it. Remember, we only want to focus on the things we can control and adapt to the things we cannot control. So for me, I don't care who wins the presidency. It's more about what is best for the economy, what is best for the American people, and what is best for the crypto development in the future. So let's go from there, Armando, and talk about the game theory part of it and how you see this playing out.
Game theory is a economic set of economic principles that tries to figure out what's the best way to play basically a game, but these games are serious. War, economics, and stuff like that. Because each decision that you make is dependent and based on the decisions that somebody else makes. Yep. For example, in Monopoly, if somebody chooses to buy Boardwalk before you, now you have to figure out a way to either get Park Place or try to buy Boardwalk from them. And people will study their whole lives. John Nash was one. They study their entire lives to figure out what's the best decisions to make. So in the world of Bitcoin, the people who adopted the earliest have the most benefit. That's what you're seeing with El Salvador right now. El Salvador is doing extraordinarily well because they adapted it early. Yep. So what the United States is trying to do is be early as well, because whoever's the earliest into this Bitcoin, whoever adopts it first, both people individually, institutions, and governments are going to be the better off in the future. So governments and companies that resist Bitcoin are going to be at a negative position. It's if I was in playing Monopoly, and everybody's around the game, right? And the first player decides to buy some property, second player buys property. I just sit there and just go around the board. Eventually, everything's going to be gone. Yep. And I'm going to be at a disadvantage because I failed to act. So that's what's happening right now. And just the fact that Harris has to talk about it shows us the impact that we're seeing in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, if you think back, you and I have been in crypto for over 10 years. And I felt that the cryptocurrency space, starting with Bitcoin, was the best opportunity of my lifetime to be ahead of the curve, to be able to create great wealth, and to be able to beat the big guys. That's always the thing. The system is rigged against the everyday person, the everyday investor, the retail investor. And I felt with cryptocurrency, and I still feel it today, even though the biggest and brightest and all of the top banks and hedge funds and investment firms are in crypto, I still feel we're early. Someone made fun of me for that the other day, and I'm like, okay, mark my words, let's talk in a couple of years and we'll see if I was wrong. But we're still so early, even though we've seen so much acceleration of price, but there's just a lot of money to be made in the crypto space. And that's why I think that people just need to understand that you don't look at the day-to-day price. You look at Bitcoin and say, it's too late. It's $66,000, it's $67,000. But they forget that if the thesis is based on supply and demand and adoption, that one Bitcoin is going to be worth $250,000 to $500,000 in the coming years, how are you too early? It doesn't make sense. I think that it's like a domino effect. People start to learn and they start to follow along, but they're always so late, like your analogy of the Monopoly board. They're always waiting, and that's why so many people buy high and sell low and get it backwards, because they're trying to mitigate all risk. And trust me, you don't build wealth by avoiding risk, and you're going to be wrong sometimes. But at the end of the day, you can't sit on the sidelines forever, and that's why I love where we're at right now in the market cycle for cryptocurrency. So let's go into our last talking point, and this was pretty cool news. I saw that Grayscale put Dogecoin and WorldCoin on a list of potential crypto products that they would be offering. And this is a great move by them, because they put together their 35 potential new cryptos that would be included in their suite of offerings through Grayscale. So I love this announcement, and let's talk through it a little bit of what can be expected from Grayscale in the coming months with this offering, because I feel like they're just always ahead of the curve in the crypto space. And I thought it was interesting that Dogecoin was one of those 35 projects of all the projects that are out there, but it could mean something that we don't know. Because again, remember, the big banks and institutions have the information before we do. They know what's happening before we do. And that's why you have to stay on top of the information that's out there and not have the knee-jerk reactions. Walk our listeners through it, Armando. What are your thoughts about this announcement?
Yeah, it's pretty big news. Grayscale is one of the largest digital asset managers in the world now. And when they add a coin to their offerings, that's a huge deal, right? Now, it's not like you talked about how They have access to more information than we have. And it could be like we've been talking about for the last 6 months, is that when the bull market starts to come into effect, people are going to remember what was hot last cycle.
Yep.
What else was it? Shiba was
Yep.
hot. So they're going to go right back to that. That's just human nature. Humans are creatures of habit. So that could be what they're predicting. Now, like I said, the thing about it is I always tell people is that when I first started in cryptocurrency years and years ago, the big thing was utility. It has to have utility. It has to mean something. And I really believed in that back then. And I was like, that coin doesn't have utility, so it's worthless. But as I've grown older, wiser, and been in the market more, I've started to realize that things have value because people say it has value. That's it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
why does the dollar have value? Because the government said it's worth $1. It's just a piece of paper with print on it. So yeah, I agree.
Why do diamonds have value? They're just rocks.
Yeah.
Why does gold have value? Because it's rare, but still, there's other materials that are rarer than gold. But they're not as worth much as gold. It's all about what the group of people say it's worth, right? So if Dogecoin can change into something else as more of maybe a currency or maybe some type of store of value, maybe some kind of oil type thing to fuel some type of platform, it can move from being a meme coin to actually a legit coin. And because they have so many people, including Elon Musk behind it, and Elon Musk is saying he's going to start integrating cryptocurrency into X.com. So maybe that's what they're seeing. So I wouldn't push Dogecoin to the side or any other of these coins that are on this list because they have access to information that we don't have. And that means that these things are more than meme coins because they're entering the interest of institutions.
And I think it's important to be able to understand the difference between a news cycle that's positive for a specific sector or cryptocurrency project versus shilling. We see it every single day where a coin comes out of nowhere and there's 10 people out there telling you it's going to 100x or 1000x. That's shilling. If all of a sudden you see every influencer in crypto out there shilling a project, be careful, because if you're not first, you're going to be last and you're going to get wrecked. Whereas the difference of what we're talking about is when you see adoption, governments, you see all of these huge companies like Grayscale and ARK and BlackRock all getting involved, that's when it gets really good to understand the real adoption and the real projects versus the ones that are being shilled and likely will go back to zero. And one of the things I want to touch on before we move on is that WorldCoin is also on Grayscale's list, and I thought this was an interesting pick. For those of you unfamiliar, let's give them a rundown of what WorldCoin is. And for everyone watching, please don't confuse this with Trump's new launch of the World Liberty financial coin and platform, because it's two different things. So just keep that in mind. And I'm not saying Trump's project may not be great. It's for accredited investors. I'm sure it could have some great utility behind it. I don't know enough about it yet, but WorldCoin is totally different, and let's walk our listeners through it.
Yeah, WorldCoin is one of the newer, relatively new crypto projects. It was co-founded by Sam Altman. That's the same guy that runs OpenAI, which is ChatGPT is based on. Yeah, so what he's trying to do is he's trying to take identity and he's trying to take a finance and merge them together. So basically the concept is that you get paid in WorldCoin tokens for your identity, right? So you line up, you get your retina scan, and they would pay you some money for doing that. And they would also pay you some type of income as long as they use that data. It wouldn't just be a one-time payment. So a lot of people are seeing this as getting, people who ordinarily wouldn't have access to capital or any kind of income, being able to make something off of their more or less. So it allows people who may have not had access to monetizing their identity in the past, now they have a chance to do. But on the other side is that Sam Altman is projected to be the richest man in the world and also the most powerful within 5 years. So somebody having that much access to identity could be dangerous. But we don't know yet, so it is something that we have to be careful with, because too much power centralized under one man historically is not fared out well. But I think it's a good idea. I think that as WorldCoin starts to build out this infrastructure, it could benefit a lot of people, and also with all the frauds and scams that are going on, it could be a positive way to identify people on the blockchain going forward.
And I also think this could be the gateway technology as we move forward towards a universal basic income to where we could see WorldCoin being a leader in that aspect, because I believe we will see a day in the coming 5 to 10 years where there is a universal basic income, and this would be a verification process and a way to be able to do that. So yeah, I think it's important, and I never worry about what is good and what is bad of these projects, because 99% of these are all going to be for good use for humanity and not nefarious in nature. And so I'm not too worried about it. And so let's wrap up by talking. So Grayscales, including Dogecoin and WorldCoin, alongside of other major assets. And do you think this could lead to greater institutional involvement in these projects? Or do you think it's business as usual as Grayscale continues to have more offerings in the crypto space?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of the smaller institutions follow what Grayscale's doing. Grayscale's the biggest one. So Grayscale can actually add credibility to any coin they want. And Coinbase does the same thing. Not as much so in the past, but I remember it was a time if Coinbase listed your coin, it would shoot up 40% that day.
I remember, yes.
So if it was even rumors would do that. So it adds credibility, gives them more exposure in the traditional markets. And people who wouldn't have access to these coins and didn't understand exchanges now have a way to access it through Grayscale's products. So it's a positive thing for whatever coin they add, and for WorldCoin and Dogecoin specifically. And it could bring more price stability, less volatility going forward.
So I know what's the top of everyone's mind right now due to what's been going on with the price action in crypto in the recent days. It's been very positive. Things are looking good. So I know everyone wants to know from us, are we in a bull market yet? And I'll lead this because I'm willing to put myself out there. I think the answer is yes, but I think we will still see more volatility until the end of this election cycle and probably into Q4, like towards the holidays. And then we will see the full bull cycle take action in early 2025. But I do think we will still see all-time highs of Bitcoin in the coming weeks, and we will see more price breakouts for XRP and some of the other AI-related cryptos that we like. But I don't think we're in the full bull cycle yet, because we're still going to see some back and forth negative pressure and news cycles because we have this election moving forward.
I think I agree with you. I think history will look back, let's say 5 years from now, and then the day that Bitcoin passed or got to 63, 64,000, the day Bitcoin got to 73, 74,000, I think that's going to be the marker for the beginning of this bull run. Now, it started slow and it was a lot of volatility, but that's going to be a marker for when this bull market starts. I think we're already in it. I don't think we're strongly in it yet,
Nope.
But I think we're already in the bull market. I just think people don't realize it yet until we start seeing those exponential gains over a few weeks or a few days or whatever's going to happen.
And that's why I've been trying to highlight so many of our big winners, because I get all of these DMs and emails saying, what happened to the bull market? Where's the bull market? So I send people screenshots and I'll be like, here's 5 of the cryptos we talk about every single day. They're all up 38, 68, 140, 200, all these great returns. But people just think they're supposed to sit back and 100x every single month or every single year. And that's just not how money and investing works. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that there is a ton of great news happening in the crypto space right now. I'm very happy with where we're at, and I'm super excited for the coming weeks and months. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and following along. You can find us at Crypto Trends Podcast on Instagram and on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And we are so excited for the rest of 2024 and moving into 2025. If you love the podcast, please share it with a friend. Give us that 5-star review. It really helps us. It costs you nothing, and it helps us move up the charts, stay stable on Spotify and Apple, and build our audience, because you may have friends that need this information, that are struggling financially and want to learn more about crypto, and this is a great place to do it. So thank you for stopping by every week.